From a magic system so deep, it'll absolutely blow your mind to a sword-wielding protagonist with an ability that breaks every rule in the world. These are all 10 magic types in Wand and Sword. Now, before we get into the regular elements, I do want to mention Will Surfort right off the bat, because his unique power is honestly the craziest thing in the entire series. But we're going to save that one for the end, because it deserves its own proper breakdown after you understand how the rest of the magic system works. So with that said, let's start with fire magic, which is one of the most straightforward and widely used elemental types you'll come across in Wand and Sword. Fire magic is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Sorcerers who specialize in this element can generate, shape, and weaponize flames to deal massive amounts of damage to their opponents. Fire mages are some of the most common combat-oriented sorcerers you'll see throughout the series, and there's a good reason for that. This magic type is incredibly versatile, allowing its users to attack from range, create defensive barriers of flame, and even enhance their own physical movements by wrapping fire around their limbs. The sheer offensive power of fire magic makes it one of the most respected elemental affinities at Regarden Magic Academy, and several of the strongest sorcerers in the story draw on this element as the backbone of their entire fighting style. Next up is water and ice magic, which is actually treated as a single affinity in Wand and Sword rather than two separate elements. Sorcerers with this affinity can manipulate water in its liquid form, freeze it into ice, and even pull moisture directly from the surrounding environment to use as a weapon. What makes this magic type so dangerous is how adaptable it is during battle. A skilled water and ice mage can shift between fluid, unpredictable attacks and rigid, fortress-like ice constructs within the same fight, which forces opponents to constantly adjust their strategy. In terms of raw utility, water and ice magic is arguably one of the most well-rounded elemental affinities in the entire series, and sorcerers who master both states of the element are absolutely terrifying to face. And let's continue with earth magic. Earth users can manipulate the ground itself, raise enormous stone walls, launch boulders, and even reshape the entire terrain of a battlefield to suit their needs. What this affinity lacks in pure speed, it more than makes up for in raw power and endurance. Earth magic is especially popular among defensive-oriented sorcerers who prefer to control the flow of battle rather than rush in aggressively. Some earth mages can also reinforce their own bodies with stone, making them incredibly difficult to take down even when hit with powerful elemental attacks. You see, against an experienced earth mage, the battlefield itself becomes your enemy, which is what makes this one of the most strategically rich affinities in Wand and Sword. Now let's talk about wind magic. Wind mages can generate powerful gusts, create invisible cutting blades out of compressed air, and even use their element to drastically increase their own movement speed during combat. This makes wind one of the most mobility-focused magic types in the series, and sorcerers who use it tend to fight in an extremely fast and unpredictable style that's very hard to keep up with. On top of that, wind magic has some genuinely insane utility outside of combat as well, since skilled users can detect vibrations in the air to essentially sense things happening around them without needing to physically see them. It's a versatile and honestly underrated affinity that gets more impressive the more powerful its user becomes. Next up is lightning magic, which is easily one of the most aggressive and high-damage elemental affinities in all of Wand and Sword. Lightning mages can fire concentrated bolts of electricity at their opponents, electrify the ground beneath their enemies' feet, and even coat themselves in crackling energy to enhance the force behind their physical strikes. The speed at which lightning attacks travel makes this one of the hardest magic types to dodge at close range, and experienced lightning sorcerers can unleash volleys of attacks so fast that most opponents simply can't react in time. The raw destructive output of this affinity is absolutely crazy, and during the bigger fights in the series, you can really see just how much damage a top-tier lightning mage is capable of putting out. And let's continue with light magic. Now, this one might sound a bit straightforward at first, but light magic in Wand and Sword is actually way more complex and powerful than most people initially expect. Light sorcerers can fire high-speed beams of concentrated energy, create blinding flashes to disorient opponents, and even use their element to accelerate projectiles to truly insane velocities. Because light travels faster than any other element, attacks from a light mage are almost impossible to react to at full power, which makes this affinity one of the most feared in direct combat situations. Some advanced users can also refract light around themselves to bend visibility, essentially making them harder to track on the battlefield. It's a genuinely amazing magic type, and one of the most visually striking affinities in the entire show. Now let's talk about darkness magic, which sits on the opposite end of the spectrum from light, and is honestly just as impressive impressive in its own right. Darkness sorcerers can manipulate shadows and dark energy, suppress an opponent's magical output, and even create zones of absolute darkness where they hold a massive advantage over anyone caught inside. What makes this affinity particularly scary is how well it pairs with ambush tactics and psychological pressure during battle. A skilled darkness mage can make an opponent feel completely helpless before the fight even really begins, and several darkness users in Wand and Sword have put that to terrifying effect throughout the series. The suppression aspect of this magic type is especially notable because it can effectively neuter even very powerful sorcerers if they're caught off guard. Next up is illusion and fantasy magic, and this one is honestly one of the most fascinating affinities in Wand and Sword because of how different it is from everything else on this list. Rather than dealing direct elemental damage, illusion mages can create hyper-realistic false environments, implant false sensory information into an opponent's mind, and essentially make their enemies fight battles that aren't even happening in reality. Can you believe that a sufficiently powerful illusion mage can trap someone in a fabricated world so convincing that their target can't distinguish it from the real one? The mental and psychological toll this magic type places on its victims is absolutely insane, and in the right hands, illusion magic can shut down opponents who would otherwise completely overpower its user in a straightforward elemental clash. And let's continue with universal and utility magic, which is a broad category that covers all the magical abilities in Wand and Sword that don't fall cleanly into a single elemental affinity. This includes things like healing magic, barrier construction, spatial manipulation, enhancement spells that boost a sorcerer's physical abilities, and support techniques designed to augment the performance of allies during battle. Sorcerers who specialize in utility magic are absolutely essential in large-scale conflicts because they provide the kind of flexible, situation-specific support that pure combat affinities simply can't offer. While utility mages might not always be the ones landing the flashiest attacks, their contributions to the outcome of a fight are often just as important as those of the most powerful elemental users in the series. Now, let's finally get to Will Surfort, and this is where things get absolutely crazy. So here's the thing about Will. He can't use magic, not a single drop. In a world where magical ability is essentially the measure of a person's worth, Will was born completely unable to cast spells, which should have made him one of the weakest people in the entire setting. Despite that, Will enrolled at Regarden Magic Academy anyway with the goal of becoming a Magia Vander, which is the highest rank a sorcerer can achieve. So, what's his actual ability, you ask? Well, Will possesses something called Wis, which is an entirely unique sword magic hybrid system that doesn't follow any of the rules governing the standard elemental affinities. Rather than casting spells through traditional magical channels, Will channels a different kind of energy through his sword techniques, allowing him to produce effects that replicate and in some cases even surpass conventional magic entirely. This is absolutely insane when you think about it, because the entire magic system in Wand and Sword is built around the idea that you need a magical affinity to compete at the highest level, and Will is out here developing a completely separate framework that operates outside of those boundaries altogether. His whiz techniques grow stronger as the series progresses, and watching him close the gap between himself and legitimate top-tier sorcerers using nothing but his sword and sheer effort is honestly one of the most amazing things the show has to offer.